Hello, and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here with arts reporter Toni Tresca, and who's also the editor of the Bucket List site. Hey, Toni.
Hello, Alex. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we spent some time together this weekend doing some stuff, but we'll talk about that in a minute. As usual, we'll look at some of the shows we've seen, some we're gonna see, shows we think you should see or maybe not, and later on in the conversation, I had a conversation with Roberta Hamilton-Griggs, who's a board member at the Historic Elitch Theatre, to talk about that theater and how it's kind of coming back to life after years of kind of neglect. So it's a fun conversation with her. So stick around for that a little later on.
I am excited to hear that conversation in anticipation of going to the Historic Elitch Theatre on Saturday. I'll be there to see the Bonfils Girl over there. So looking forward to being in that space and seeing that play later.
Yeah. I haven't been inside it. I was actually on the external side of it not too long ago, but we'll talk about that in a minute, I guess. So things that we've seen lately. So you and I both made the trek up to Evergreen this weekend for the Colorado Community Theater Coalition Festival. So I went up on Saturday and saw 2 of the 4 competition pieces. So I know we've talked about this before, but it's under these rules where, you got an hour to perform and some other things, some other parameters. And I saw a show by a one-man show about Sleepy Hollow by Funky Little Theater Company. And then the other one was the Evergreen Players, kind of the home team, did a couple of shorts by a local playwright whose name eludes me. I think it was Philip somebody. So that was cool to see that. I hadn't been there, I hadn't been at the CCTC festival. Well, I was at it last year, but it wasn't a cycle year, as they say. And then on Sunday, you and I went up there and we did a little chat about marketing for theater and kind of just trying to help people understand, what it is, what you should do or what you can do to get your performances publicity without having to spend a lot of money, and how to approach media, get reviews and previews, and how to format, calendar entries and some sort of mundane stuff, but also really important for theaters that want to get their word out. So, and I will say I'm going to make that presentation available on the website here before too long. So other theater companies that might be interested, because people seem to really appreciate the information.
Yeah, we heard from multiple attendees afterwards that they were really appreciative for just kind of going through these kind of essential basic PR and marketing tips and tactics that they can just kind of directly apply and kind of use when they're setting future marketing goals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's zillions and zillions of pages about marketing online, not so much specific to theater. So I think it was, it's useful in that respect. So, and then after we did that, we saw, while we were in the neighborhood, we zipped over to the Bailey Theater to see their production of Jack and Louise, which I think we both really enjoyed. It was, it's a neat play.
Yeah, it's a Ken Ludwig play. It's a kind of a love letter, pun intended, since the whole thing is told through letters, about to his parents, and kind of about their initial love story. It's set during World War II, and Jack, his father, is a doctor who's at war, and his mother is an aspiring dancer and actress. And the pair never meet, but they start their kind of love affair via letters for multiple years. And so you're kind of just watching them fall in love through their letters and the idea of each other. And you're kind of seeing how this shifts and changes over the years, because he's currently in war and she's kind of on tour throughout most of it. So, and it's really incredible performances. Sean Verdew was playing opposite Miranda Byers, and both of them were just perfectly cast and excellently suited to their roles.
Yeah, for sure. And Linda Suttle, who directed it, did a really nice job. The Bailey Theater has been around for, I think, about 5 years. And it was really fun to go up there. It was the first time I'd been there. It's in so when you're driving around Colorado and you see all these little resorts, they're like a bunch of cabins on the side of the road, and that's what this is. It's right off 285 in the Bailey area, and it's called Glen Isle Resort, and the theater is in this little kind of like a lodge space, and it was a perfectly
It was described to us by the arranger attendee there as the building on stilts.
Yeah, and with a lot of hummingbirds around. So, and they didn't have a very big crowd, but so I mean, this is a very intimate theater. You're never more than a few steps from the actors on stage. It's a flat surface. There's no rake of any kind, and so it's just. I love that kind of theater. I really love being that close to where the actors you might actually get spit on a little bit if they're if they're really exclaiming. So. And a really well done production. So I'll have a review of that on the site pretty soon. So what else did you see over the weekend? I think you're pretty busy too.
I had a pretty busy theater weekend, as kind of per usual. I started off. I was over at Empire of Solitude. This was the first production by Flamboyant Theater Company, which will soon be over at Benchmark Theater's old space in Lakewood. But this performance is at Bluntport Theater. And it's a new play written by John Margantoni, and it's following this Puerto Rican poet, and it's a 4-person play, and it was honestly really touching. I thought it was, for a new play, I thought it was pretty well developed. A little bit repetitive, particularly in some of the sections that utilize the poet's poetry. There was a lot of that and a lot of repetition around some of the main themes, but overall, the four actresses in the play were very well suited to their roles, and I thought it had a really nice energy to it. So it was a really strong first outing from Flamboyant Theater.
That's great to hear. And as you said, originally you thought it was going to be like over 3 hours or something like that, but it wasn't quite that long.
That's right. It was not. It was not. It was. I did indeed. The tickets say it's 3 hours, and I believe the press release at one point had mentioned it was that long, but it ended up only being about an hour and 45 minutes with an intermission, and so it was honestly a really well paced production. So
okay, and then you saw the new Catamounts show too, right?
I did. After the end, this was at Anythink Huron Street Library in Thornton. And this was an immersive production kind of built around the idea of what happens when Lena, who is the kind of our main character, it goes on a quest to find a forgotten book that was written by her grandmother. And so then you kind of go into this land of forgotten books. And you find the book, and then when you open it, you start reading it together as a group, aloud, and go on this kind of magical adventure through the book itself. It was a really whimsical experience that has a surprisingly emotional undercurrent to it. By the time I got to the end, and you kind of realize what the main themes of the play are actually about, which I don't want to spoil here because it's kind of that's kind of the point of the experience, is kind of discovering the mystery of this book and why it's forgotten. But I found myself tearing up. It was really beautiful, haunting performance that kind of takes you to these unexpected parts of the library. Everything from bookshelves to kind of random closets are used in really unconventional and exciting ways.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, I'm going to see it this weekend, so I'm looking forward to checking that one out.
And I think it's kind of family friendly. So, and I think it kind of appeals to everybody, no matter what your age is. There's kind of got a universal lesson. So whether you're this is your first experience in the theater and you're a young one, or you're a little bit on the older side, I think it's perfect for everybody. So
that sounds great.
And then the final thing I saw this weekend was a chorus line produced by Family Theater Company at the Kilstrom Theater in the Round at the Denver Center. So this was their 35th anniversary production to kind of kick off their season with Family, and they kicked it off with an absolute banger. If I can use my platform to get you to go buy a ticket for anything, I hope you'll go buy it for Family Theater's production of a chorus line. It's not yet sold out, but it absolutely deserves to be for its total reinvention on a chorus line. I mean, it's not even a chorus line in the sense that they make a straight line, because it's in the round. So they have to build around it. And that unlocks all these incredible, interesting ways that to make the themes of the text, which are, even though it was written in 1975, still feel more present than a lot of musicals written today, to the kind of themes and moment that we're kind of going through. So I was utterly just kind of gutted by Family's production. It's a joyous celebration of the disabled community and just a love letter to Family Theater Company as a whole. There's all these kind of Easter eggs to past shows that they've done, incorporated in the scenic design. And by the time that they get to the final number, you just can't help but stand up and cheer for them.
Yeah, it's great. I've heard from several people that it's a banger production, and people are talking about it online and stuff too. So it sounds like one to definitely check out. So we'll get to some more shows here in a little bit. I was just going to mention in my random topic section here. So last week I was talking about the new Ford Amphitheater opening in Colorado Springs, and I was at one point I was pondering whether it was an indoor and outdoor facility, and so thousands of people didn't write in to remind me that of course it's an outdoor venue because amphitheaters are by definition outside things. So. And I was looking around. I was like, "Well, what does according to Wikipedia, amphitheaters originated in Greece around 70 BC, and the name is a mashup of amphi, meaning on both sides or around, and theatron, meaning a place for viewing. So it comes from how they were being built into hillsides and were semicircular back then. But modern parlance also uses amphitheater for any structure with sloping seating, including theater-style stages with spectator seating on only one side, theaters in the round, and stadia. They can be indoor or outdoor. So, I don't know, take what you will out of that, but I think mostly they're outdoors.
Yeah, I last week on the episode, you did also note that this particular amphitheater has VIP suites with fire pits. So I kind of seems unlikely that the Ford itself would ever be indoors. But who am I? No judgment here.
Yeah, there's definitely people have fireplaces in their houses, so who knows? So,
true.
And then one last thing I was just reading about, there's also natural amphitheaters, with one particularly famous one around here called Red Rocks. But others include the Drakensberg Amphitheater in South Africa is another famous one. Slán Castle in Ireland, the Supernatural Amphitheater in Australia, and the Gorge Amphitheater in Washington State. So there's a couple of other cool natural amphitheaters out there. So that's my section on amphitheaters. Apologies for my silly mistake last week.
You don't need to apologize, Alex. It's a totally fair mistake. There's a lot of word salads that can potentially happen on the podcast when you record live.
That's right.
But in other news, you're in the news, Alex.
I know. What the heck?
Yeah, John Moore wrote this incredible story about you and OnStage Colorado for his weekly column in the Denver Gazette on August 10th. It's a really great piece about you and your career and kind of the incredible work you've done over the past 6 years to really grow OnStage Colorado.
Yeah, it was weird to be on the other side of the interview table, but it was fun. John and I, have known each other a long time, and of course he's forgotten more about Colorado theater than I'll ever know. But so it's always fun to talk to somebody with such deep knowledge. And then to have him, delving into kind of my side of it, because we cover theater in different ways.
Totally. I mean, he begins the piece with this really great line. If the past few years post-COVID have been a bit of an overcast for the Colorado performing arts community, think of Alex Miller as it's sunshine on a cloudy day. And I remember I read that in the car for the first time when I was with you on the way to give our talk on theater marketing and PR on Sunday. And I remember just having an audible reaction to that line because it's just, so true. And does it feel like a little bit weird to have that spotlight on you for a change, or kind of nice? You enjoying it?
Sure. It's funny to be, I've been kind of in the dumps for the last, year because I've been unemployed and stuff. So it's hard to be called sunshine. But I do definitely want to turn the sunshine on theaters. So, but I was thinking about it. I think it's odd to be interviewed as a journalist, but I almost feel like almost every journalist should have this experience because it really gives you a taste of what it's like to be featured like this. And how very important it is to get the facts right. Because when you're talking about people's lives, it's like, you really want to be careful. And John did a great job. And we talked for a long time. And he said he cut a lot out of the piece, which was still plenty long. But the funny thing was, he didn't want to meet at a coffee shop because they're too loud. So we met in the Carousel Shell, which is at the Historic Elitch Theatre. It's where, Elitch's used to be when it was an amusement park. And there's still the shell, I guess they call it. It's just kind of like an open-sided covering where the carousel sat. And so we were just sitting in there. There was only like one little bench. So we were like sitting next to each other there on this misty day. So it was a fun conversation.
Yeah. And it's really a wide ranging conversation too. I mean, he gets into your past as the editor of Vail Daily, the 2-time editor of Summit Daily News, as well as your marketing and performance background. And he also, of course, talks about OnStage Colorado's upcoming expansion into the live music and comedy scene. However, as he kind of notes in his subhead, he does say that the model raises some questions, and John identifies that, and I quote here, the reviews are almost always reliably positive on OnStage Colorado, and that, quoting here, those advertisers that are largely the same that companies he covers. So just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on kind of that and kind of the model of OnStage Colorado, which John was kind of raising a couple questions here about.
Yeah, it's a fair observation. I don't mind if the site errs on the side of positive recognition of all these theater companies. But at the same time, we strive to be balanced, have balanced coverage, because it doesn't do anybody any good to say that a show that's kind of meh or really, or not even good is good, because then the people are misled into buying tickets for something that's not so great. So you don't want to hear people yelling at you about that. At the same time, as I observed to John, I said, I really think, I don't see, uniformly bad shows. Like, I've been covering theater for almost about 30 years in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And so I just remember, I don't know, I just feel like overall the quality of shows is pretty good. So, don't get in too many places where I have to really be negative about shows and really want to pump up the good aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I John kind of ends on that note as well, kind of highlighting how the theater scene has kind of improved since you kind of started covering it in the 90s. And overall, I really thought it was a super interesting piece that highlights a lot of the hard work you've been putting into OnStage Colorado over the past 6 years. And it's been getting an incredible response on Facebook, which is, of course, the main arbiter of success in the world. So you're in the theater community, so you're huge, Alex.
I know, it's funny. Well, it's funny. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but a lot of people have kind of quit Facebook, posting on there. But for the theater community in Colorado, it's very much the place. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a lot of that's the main thing that I look on and post on is the theater sites on Facebook. So.
Thank you to all these folks for sharing these incredible comments on Facebook. It's so nice to see social media be used to spread love rather than hate for once.
Yeah. And I will add that, like, even though the story's focus was on me, it really the reason OnStage Colorado has its success is relying on a lot of help, including you, Toni, and we have about 8 or 10 volunteer reviewers around the metro area and in other parts of the state, and also a big shout out to Lane Ware of Golden, who does a big chunk of the calendar, which is a thankless job. But I mean, if you go on our calendar, you'll see that pretty much everything going on stage in Colorado is on there. So that's something that we do together. So. Yeah, and the other part of the equation is this podcast, which is another labor of love that takes a lot of work, but that is growing. A lot of people have told us they enjoy listening to it.
Mm-hmm. And we've also been getting some new 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast and Spotify. So thank you all so much for doing that. And if you haven't rated or reviewed us, please go ahead and do that wherever you're currently listening now. And one user, ALR1717, was kind enough to include this comment with their review on Apple Podcast on August 2nd that says, "No notes, a must listen for anyone in the Colorado theater community, smiley face."
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that, ALR1717. All right. Well, let's talk about comedy clubs. So this is, what's kind of think about, like, what's the closest thing you can do to going to a theatrical performance without actually going to a theatrical performance?
Yeah, and the obvious kind of answer to that is comedy clubs and comedy shows of all kinds. And that's kind of our main topic for the weeks.
Yeah, it's a live performer on stage, but, and that's where the similarities kind of end for the most part. But in addition to the great theater going on around Colorado, it seems like we're in kind of a golden age of stand-up and improv, and sort of some of that is kind of merges into the immersive realm. But you cover this quite a bit more than I have, so I'll let you kick it off here.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Whether you're talking to audience members, comedy club owners, or comedians themselves, both local comics as well as touring artists, they will tell you that Denver is one of the top spots for comedy in the entire country. Yeah, it kind of goes. You maybe get some debate about where it fits into the ranking among LA, New York, and Chicago and Austin, but they're definitely in the top 5 because we've got a great audience here and we've got a plethora of clubs. So I did quite a bit of coverage about this earlier this year for Westward, including kind of diving into why the comedy scene was so popping. And then also a piece that I wrote for them on March 13th about the 10 best places to see comedy in Denver, which we'll link to kind of in the podcast description here, and kind of quickly run through some of those highlights in the Denver area before branching out to cover comedy clubs around the rest of the state.
Yeah, so what are some of those? So the first one that you had down here was Chaos Bloom Theater.
Yeah, so this is a new one, opened in July 2020. It's the newest spot for improv and sketch comedy in Denver. It's also a place where you can kind of comedians can sharpen their skills in their educational training center. And they do shows Thursday through Sunday. You can catch shows from all around the country and notable local acts from here in Denver, too. So that's at 70 South Broadway.
All right. One I was going to mention that I don't think was on your list is Don't Tell Comedy, which they had a show at Meow Wolf that I went to. But they're a really interesting one where they just they perform in different kind of unusual places. Like they could be like in a bar or even like a gym or a yoga studio. And you don't know who's the comedians are going to be or quite where it's going to be. But if you go on the Don't Tell Comedy site, you'll see that there's a number of shows going on in like Fort Collins and Denver and around Colorado. So that's another one to check out. And they're very affordable. I think that tickets are $25 and a lot of them you can bring your own bottle. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and those are really fun shows.
Yeah.
The big dog, probably the biggest player, what you think of when you think of comedy in Denver is Comedy Works. It's got 2 locations, downtown off Larimer Square and then south over in Greenwood Village. This is definitely one of the top comedy operations. Comedy Works downtown has been around since 1981, followed by the expansion of Comedy Works South in 2008. They've kind of consistently rated one of the top comedy clubs in the entire country. And people who've kind of come through on the stage include folks like Jerry Seinfeld, Louis Black, Joan Rivers, among others. And it's just also a super nurturing spot for emerging comics as well, with their new talent program, as well as the Funny Final Four and their other various programs that they do around the year to kind of feature and make sure that new comics are getting on their stages.
Yep. That's a big operation. If you look on their website and their calendar between the 2 sites, you can see there's a ton of comedy to check out there.
Mm-hmm. Another spot is the Denver Comedy Lounge. This is also over on Larimer Street. It is founded by stand-up comedian Ben Kronberg, and every weekend night at 8 p.m. the stage comes alive with various comedians, musicians, and artists. So it's kind of a variety approach to programming over there. So you never know what you're going to see on that stage.
Okay. And then you mentioned also in this list the Denver Comedy Underground. So they're at the Althea Center. Where is that?
It's kind of tricky to explain where the actual center is because it's located in another building at 1400 Williams Street. But it's kind of it started in the back room of the Irish Snug back in 2019, but following COVID and when that location closed, he moved it over to the location in Cat Hill, where it is now in September of 2021. So this was started by Ben Bryant, and their tagline really says it all: free pizza, free drinks, and great comedy.
Really?
Yeah, it's all you have to pay a cover to get in, but then you get all that once you get in.
Okay. Wow.
I believe it's $20 to get in.
Yeah, that's another great point about comedy is a lot of times, unless you go into the big comedy clubs where you got the 2-drink minimum and stuff, a lot of these are really affordable ways to go see live performance.
That's very true. Yeah. Although places like you just mentioned, like Comedy Works, they do have that 2-item minimum, which can get you an add up.
Yep.
Another kind of interesting spot for comedy in Denver is Denver's Dangerous Theater. This is at 2620 West 2nd Avenue. They're kind of a champion of new, original, and daring works that focus on productions and comedy that you might not find anywhere else. Their kind of motto is uncensored and boundary-pushing comedy there. So go there if you're looking for a kind of freaky night out.
Yeah. And then moving into the improv world, you've got Denver Improv. They're on Northfield Boulevard. So what do you know about this one?
So they're a national chain, the Improv is, and they produce shows that kind of all around the country for over 40 years. The Denver Improv was one of their kind of early locations that they kind of invested in, and they've recently reinvested in it with the kind of promotion of a new leadership over there, Chris, and in the leadership role. And so they've really been reinventing the programming over there, bringing in more local acts. And so it's really fun show. I've seen quite a number of acts over there, everything from like big comedians to a Shrek drag brunch. So it's a really vibrant space, and they are programming the hell out.
Did you say a Shrek drag brunch?
I did. I did say that. That is accurate.
Wow, who wouldn't want to see that? And then there's some places that do kind of a mix of things. One of them is Lion's Lair on East Colfax. So what about this one?
Yeah, so you might be thinking, wait, isn't the Lion's Lair a music venue? And you're right, it is. It's the city's oldest continually operating independent music venue, but they also embrace comedy, burlesque, and variety acts. So they host an open mic comedy show led by Anthony Crawford every Monday night at 10, and the Gong Show Tuesdays at 9:30, and among other kind of programming that they mix up that you can check out on their calendar on their website.
Okay. And then after the Comedy Works empire, I think the next kind of biggest one is Rise Comedy, right?
It's kind of debatable if Denver Improv or Rise Comedy is next, but they're definitely all in that kind of top 3 for sure. So this started as Voodoo Comedy Playhouse back in 2011 by Stephen Wilder, and was taken over by current co-owners Nick Armstrong and Josh Nichols in 2019. And they feature everything from improv to stand-up to sketch comedy to variety shows, drag, clowning, and they also have their annual Rise Comedy Festival, which has been going for 3 years now. And they don't show any sign of slowing down their programming. They've also got a massive educational program. They just built 3 new rooms in their back space, which are massive and lovely. So the owners are over there are clearly invested in this location and really working to kind of grow it so they can be, as you said, kind of a true competitor to Comedy Works.
Yeah. And when I look at their calendar, they have a lot of classes. So if you want to learn stand up or improv or things like that, there's opportunities there to try your hand without maybe going up there cold and, at the end of at 1 a.m, like at the regular open mic nights.
And they've got some serious teachers over there, like everybody from Nick Armstrong and himself he's a TV writer. He's written on stuff like Parks and Rec. They've got local comedians like Christy Buckley, who is teaching their intro to stand-up comedy class, who is like a local legend. So they're really making the investment in talent and programming and the education over there.
Yeah.
So would not be surprised if in a couple of years they really are considered like our major rival to Comedy Works.
I was glad to see you had the Bug Theater on the list. The Bug is kind of a catch-all. They do different things, but they do have a lot of comedy in there. So what kind of stuff can you see at the Bug?
Yeah, so this is a really kind of kooky space over at 3654 Navajo Street. It's run by executive director Alex August Weimer, and the Bug's mission kind of remains firmly rooted in making the arts accessible to all with affordable rental rates and ticket prices. And you can see stuff like the Grolics over here. They've been doing their monthly show for years now. They also support a show called Freak Train, which is arguably the longest running variety show in Denver. This is hosted by Jerry Henshaw. It's celebrating its 24th anniversary later this month in August, the end of August on the whatever the last Monday in August is, that's when their anniversary is. So it's all kinds of stuff over there. They're really kind of interested in investing in interesting experimental program by local talent. So Alex he's a really great guy too, just super chill, down to earth. He's kind of a one-man band over there as he jokes. But
yeah, we should get some of those freak show folks on the podcast to help celebrate their anniversary.
If you want to read more about the Freak Show anniversary, check out this week's copy of Westward, in which I do a profile about Freak Train and in celebration of their 24th anniversary.
Ah, that's great.
And the Bugs' 30th anniversary is coming up in October, I would be remiss to announce as well. So it's been around and kicking for 30 years now.
Yeah, it's great to see a venue like that keep going, figure out a way to keep going with all kinds of live entertainment. So, Wide Right on Curtis Street. So I was looking at this. You wrote down it was named in homage to the Buffalo Bills' Scott Norwood's infamous missed Super Bowl field goal in 1991. I was like, what? That is a real deep cut.
It is a really deep cut unless you're a Buffalo Bills fan, in which it is the most painful thing you can possibly imagine. This is a Buffalo Bills themed bar located here in Denver. It opened just as COVID shut down bars across Colorado and features a bunch of different comedy nights over there.
Okay. And then another one, Dude, IDK Studios on East 28th Street. So this is kind of an up-and-coming place, right?
That's right. They just opened last June, but they're quickly becoming known as a top spot for local comics. They also double as a podcast and photo video studio by day, and then by night they do a lot of different comedy shows. They record podcasts and they help do kind of a full service program they offer over there. If you want to invest with them, they do marketing services for all sorts of local comedians, including like folks like Hannah Jones, who is pretty well known here, and to like podcasts like the Fake Fantasy podcast. I'm blanking on the exact name, but it's all kinds of stuff in there.
Okay. Another venerable venue, Clock Tower Cabaret. So they do a lot of burlesque and cabaret, but also comedy, right?
That's right. Yeah, this is an intimate cabaret theater just off of 16th Street, the 16th Street Mall. It was actually designed by Lonnie Hanson, who is the well-known visual artist around Denver. They feature a wide variety of shows, including burlesque, comedy, tribute bands of eras past, drag, and more since 2006.
All right. One other one I was just going to mention, and we've mentioned them a few times on here, but What If Theater. These guys are in Lakewood, and they've got a variety of comedy things going on there as well. So, I'm sure there's others that we haven't hit in the Denver area, but what about if you don't live in Denver? What are some of the other places around the state that you can check out comedy?
Yeah, great question, because there are quite a few other spots around the state where you can go. So including Boulder Comedy Show. This is at 2725 Valmont Road in Boulder. They do live comedy shows every night at the Rayback Collective, which is kind of this bar kind of / food truck meetup spot near downtown in the 29th Street Mall over in Boulder. It was created in 2013 by comedian and CU alumnus Brent Gill, he's a Comedy Works regular. He's also toured with a number of notable comedians. So he's a serious programmer with a lot of cool connections. So they bring in a lot of serious talent over there.
All right. Well, another place in Boulder is the Underground Comedy Showcase on 13th Street. So this is it's like a speakeasy.
That's right. Yeah, it's inside license number 1, which is this speakeasy bar located just off Pearl Street. And this event is hosted by Comic Sense, and they have live comedy shows in this kind of really cool space down there every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night.
All right. And then your neck of the woods, Louisville, the Louisville Underground.
That's right. This is located at the Corner in Louisville. It opened on February 22nd, 2020, which for a number of reasons was not a great time to open.
No.
But they survived it. They pushed through, and they're now programming all sorts of comedians, live musicians, psychics, and other kind of live performance acts in this space. And It's kind of cool. They're in the basement under that's like right next to Tilt Pinball in Louisville. So it's a really interesting venue, and they've been programming it pretty well.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like a fun place to check out. Up north in Fort Collins, the Comedy Fort. So this one's kind of been around a while, right?
It's actually it's fairly new because Fort Collins actually hasn't had a serious comedy club in 30 years since Comedy Works shuttered its Fort Collins location. Now, it actually used to have a location up there. That's where the owner, Wendy, actually kind of got her start as a bartender, was at the Fort Collins location. But they ended up shutting that down, and since then, Fort Collins has been without its own space. They've been kind of forced to go outside the community. But local comedian and show producer David Rodriguez opened this spot in February of 2021, and since then, it's become a hotspot for touring and local acts.
Okay. Cool. What about up in the mountains? What kind of options to have for people that are up in the hills, for skiing or hiking or whatever?
So my research came up fairly limited, but I did find a really cool spot in Vail called the Vail Comedy Show. This was founded by Colorado comedian Mark Masters in 2019 and has been dubbed the best ski town comedy club in the nation. The club flies in headliners who you've seen on TV and in movies from all over, and many of their openings are kind of featuring well-known comics from Denver. So sounds like a cool spot. I've never been there. Vail is a little bit out of my way and price range, so I'm not there all the time. But I would love to get up there to see a show eventually.
Yeah. A couple of other mountain comedy or improv programs I would mention. Theater Silco and Silverthorne does regular, nice. Not a ton, but they do have a regular program. And Creed Repertory Theater way down south also has their Boom Town during their summer rep season. I think every Friday or Saturday night basically the players that are in the rep company also do improv, and they do a great job. And then the Evergreen Theater has something called the Epic Troupe that does regular shows, and they have their Epic Summer Improv Comedy coming up on August 23rd and 24th at the Center Stage up at Evergreen, where we were just yesterday. So that's a couple other mountain places before we come back up to kind of the Front Range and talk about Colorado Springs. So what are some of the Springs comedy options?
Yeah, so the big player in the Springs is this really famous club called Looney's Comedy Corner. They've been making this area laugh for over 30 years. They kind of bring in veteran comedians as well as those who are in the Southern Colorado area. They're kind of not quite as fancy as something like a Comedy Works, but they're definitely offering similar talent and programming to something like Comedy Works.
Okay. And then there's a brand new one, Peak Improv Theater on Carefree Circle in the Springs.
Yeah, I actually have not been to this one yet because it is so new. It just opened its doors in January of 2024. But they're a new space that's located in the Springs dedicated to improv comedy. They do shows, classes, you can rent their space, and they also do corporate events. So if you've got a corporate event coming up, maybe consider Peak Improv Theater.
All right. Well, I would also note that we do have a menu drop down on our site, on our calendar, that has a lot of stand-up and improv on it. We haven't done all of it just because it's such a big field. I've been getting most of Rise's shows in there because they use the same calendar program that we do, which makes it easier to kind of import it. But yeah, you can definitely find a lot of stuff on there. All right. Well, a little bit of a long listicle, but I think it's really illuminating to see how much comedy is going on around in Colorado to let people know about it. So we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll discuss our Colorado headliners and then learn a bit more about the Historic Elitch Theatre from Roberta Hamilton-Griggs. So stick around. OnStage Colorado is supported by the Aurora Fox Arts Center, celebrating its 40th anniversary September 7th with a season announcement celebration from 6 to 9 p.m. at the theater. Tickets are only $10 and can be purchased at aurorafoxartscenter.org. Support also comes from the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, whose upcoming season kicks off September 26th with Henry Ibsen's Enemy of the People, adapted by Mark Reagan. The show runs through October 13th at the Denver Savoy, and then again November 8th through 17th at the Dairy Center in Boulder. Tickets at betc.org. OnStage Colorado is sponsored by the Colorado Fine Arts Center at Colorado College. Tickets for their upcoming season are on sale now and include Dial M for Murder, The City Dog and the Prairie Dog, In Her Bones, and The Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed. More at fac.colorado.college.edu. All right, we're back here at the OnStage Colorado podcast. We're going to do our Colorado headliners thing. So this is like our top 10 shows or other things like festivals, stuff like that we're excited about seeing, or things that we think that would be definitely worth checking out. Okay, so my first headliner is Circus of the Night at Millabo Art Theater. This is on August 24th. This is something they do every year. And so if you find the calendar listing on our site, you'll see a link to a review that April did for the show last year. But this year, it's their 10th anniversary. So, these guys have been doing circus type stuff for a long time. They're super legit, and definitely it's a really fun show to go through, according to April.
Cool. My first headliner for this week is Cruel Intentions, the musical by Shifted Lens Theater Company. This is a new immersive troupe based out of Aurora, and this musical is described as the ultimate 90s throwback. Venture into the rich and manipulative world of stepsisters Sebastian and Catherine as they go on a kind of cruel little quest. This is going to be at the People's Building in Aurora, August 16th through September 1st.
All right. My next one is Twelfth Night, Shakespeare's comedy being presented by Shakespeare in the Wild in Centennial. So not a place that often has theater, Centennial. So this is August 16th through September 2nd at the Covent Park, right near the Goodson Rec Center. This is a free show, but they do ask that you make a reservation. But really a great opportunity to get out and see some Willie the Shake in the wild there in Centennial, known for its wild places.
I love that. 12th Night is a really fun show, though. So
it is.
Definitely do go see that. My second headliner is The Mystery of Edwin Drood. This is an interactive whodunit mystery musical that allows the audience to enter the action and vote on who they think the murderer is in this musical. This is loosely based on Charles Dickens' unfinished novel of the same name. And, fun fact, I had been in this musical before. I played one of the murder suspects, Durdles, the gravedigger, and I had but I would just say that you probably don't vote for Durdles. His song is really stupid. I can admit that.
So is The Mystery of Edwin Drood is a sort of melodrama adjacent? Is that kind of the vibe, or?
Definitely. It's kind of a show within a show. So it's you see the actors come on. It's set in the English music hall setting. And you're watching the show at the Music English Hall. And so it's kind of switching in and out of the action. It's very meta, very quick, and very, very melodramatic. So this version, yeah,
it's been around a while. I remember seeing pictures hanging in the old backstage theater of, I think they did it way back in the 70s or something like that. So, my next one is Prima's Guide to Funerals. So this is at Creed Repertory Theater, running through September 14th. This is a world premiere comedy. It's set in the San Luis Valley of Colorado. And it's got laughter, love, grief, family kind of things. And Kate Berry down there had asked me if we could come review it. And I'm like, God, I'd love to try and find a way to get down there, but I don't know if I can. But it sounds like a really cool show. And of course, there's plenty of reasons to go down to Creed, and including the aforementioned Boomtown Improv. But they're also doing Young Frankenstein and Baskerville this summer. So lots of good stuff going down there in Creed.
If anyone has a helicopter that Alex and I can borrow to get to Creed, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
And I don't think I mentioned where folks can see The Mystery of Edwin Drood. That's going to be at the Durango Arts Center. It opens August 16th and runs through September 1st. And then my third headliner is Momentum. So this is a dance show featuring brand new creations by acclaimed choreographers Jamar Roberts, Penny Sanders, and Laura O'Malley. This is presented by Dance Aspen at the Aspen District Theater for one night only on August 16th.
All right. Well, you got to plan your Aspen trip quick. That's coming up. Another one that caught my eye is Upstart Crow in the Boulder area theater company are doing a show called Dover Road from August 22nd through September 1st. And I was like, what is Dover Road? And I was looking it up, and it's got a great plot. It says it's set in the home of the eccentric Mr. Latimer, who waylays couples who are running away together, eloping, and gives them a taste of what their lives together might be like. So he basically kidnaps people that are eloping on their way from London to Paris to, I guess, elope. And so it says, with the aid of his magisterial and benign butler, he keeps them confined together at his house for a week to discover for themselves whether they are truly compatible when exposed to each other's constant company. So maybe all married couples should do this. Might save you on a divorce problem later down the road. But the other interesting thing about this play, it was written by A.A. Milne. So you know that name. We all know that name. He is the creator of Winnie the Pooh. So this is an older play. This play is a little over 100 years old. It's from 1921. But I was looking, and so I was like, I didn't know A.A. Milne, wrote plays, but he actually wrote a lot of plays. So before he even wrote Winnie the Pooh, he created 18 plays and 3 novels. But it was really interesting, and this is kind of off the path a little bit, but I thought it was interesting that he hated the fame and being pegged as a children's writer, and he really resented the attention that Winnie the Pooh garnered for his son, Christopher Robin Milne, and really was like horrified by how much, so it's kind of like early shades of, too much publicity for a kid. And so Christopher Robin went on to really resent his father and hate the books. So interesting story there about Winnie the Pooh, and he didn't write any kids books after that, because he was like, to hell with this, I don't want to be known that way. So he did other things.
Wow, I had no idea that Winnie the Pooh destroyed a family.
I know, little fuzzy bear,
a safe bastard. All right, my fourth pick for a headliner this week is Adam Caden Holland, who is a local comic, is producing his one-man show, Happy Place Again. This is loosely based on his memoir, Tragedy Plus Time, and it deals with suicide, mental illness, his career in stand-up comedy, and Nancy Kerrigan. This is going to be done for one night only at the Bug Theater, which we talked about in the previous segment, on August 17th.
All right, that sounds cool. My last headliner is Della Doucette at Vintage. This is another premiere. This is running at from August 23rd through September 22nd, and this comes out of Vintage's 2023 New Play Festival. It's written by Kirsten Dahl, and it's a romantic comedy set in 1981. So Della, the lead character, is a woman on the run from a military marriage trying to find her way in the gritty New York art world. So fresh new theater at Vintage.
Very cool. My final headliner for the week is An Evening of Colorado-Grown One Acts, produced at the Louisville Center for the Arts by Cold Creek Theater of Louisville. So this is the result of their 2023 playwriting contest and features Earworms by Brad Rutledge, Plugged In by Grant Swenson, and Serving the Story by Scott Gibson.
So that's our headliners for the week. A couple of things to note, new reviews that are on the site or upcoming. Last Train to Niebrock is a funky little theater show that Judith Sears just sent that review just a few minutes before we started here. So I'll have that on site soon from Funky. And that's going to be in Palmer Lake, which is in sort of north of the Springs or north of Monument, a little tiny town there. So that's where they're doing that one. We talked about After the End from the Catamounts. I'll have a review of that, and I think Eric will have a review of the also aforementioned Chorus Line from Family, as well as Cruel Intentions from Shifted Lens. So that's what's coming up on the website. And for now, hang on. My interview with Roberta Hamilton-Griggs is next to talk about the Historic Elitch Theatre. So see you on the other side. Okay, so we're here with Roberta Hamilton-Griggs with the Historic Elitch Theatre. Roberta, thanks so much for being on the OnStage Colorado podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex, for having me.
Yeah, well, we've been really psyched about the Historic Elitch Theatre coming back to life, and it's got its first live performance coming up here in a week or two with the Bonfils Girl, so we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I just want to. So first of all, what's your association with the theater? What's your role there?
Well, since the fall of 2022, I have been on the board. So I'm on the board of directors, and it is definitely a very hard-working board, and we've been very excited to start having all of this enthusiasm about live theater coming back. But the reason I started on the board was because many, many, many moons ago, I was in the very last production at the Historic Elitch Theatre with Patrick Cassidy, which was the Robber Bridegroom. So that was in 1991 to celebrate the 100th year. And here we are, 133 years into the Elitch Theatre and 33 years after the Robber Bridegroom. So,
wow, that's really cool that you've got that sort of history with the theater that's got its own long history. So can we let me just ask if you can go back to the beginning? When was this theater? So this theater is 133 years old now.
That's correct.
And has it always been in that location? Was it moved?
It was never moved.
Okay.
No, it was transformed quite a lot. John and Mary Elitch started that theater in 1891, and it was actually built a little bit before that. But they built it almost like a circus tent. There were no walls around it, and it lasted for well over 110 years without even a foundation.
Wow. Wow, and what were they doing there in the beginning, like melodrama and opera or things like that?
Some melodrama, lots of the just basic comedy shows, and some of the kind of circus acts and fun things like that. And then Mary decided, well, John Elitch was a theater guy, and so he loved the theater, and he took the money that they actually earned those first couple years to take his acting troupe on tour. And then he would kind of blow it on the tour, come back and make some more money with his restaurants in the gardens and that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And then in 1891, he actually was on one of these tours in San Francisco, and he developed pneumonia. And luckily, Mary was able to be there at the time, but he passed away then. And so she went back and fulfilled his dream of having the theater.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's sort of tragic, but also cool that she was able to pick up the baton. And now, did I read somewhere that the Elitch Theatre was one of the first, if not the first, summer stock theaters?
Yes, I wouldn't go as far as saying the very, very first, but definitely one of the first. And even Cecil B. DeMille, who was on stage in 1905 on the Elitch Theatre stage, after he was kind of like the father of cinema and Hollywood, he would write every year to the theater and congratulate all of the actors, and has said that Elitch's was really one of the cradles of American theater.
Wow, that's pretty high praise from old Cecil there. Yeah,
exactly.
Uh-huh. So from those early days, what was it like as he kind of got into the 1900s and through the war years? Was it sort of doing the same thing, or was it starting to show movies, things like that?
Well, that was certainly one of the things that happened when the movies started to come, that there was more of a competition. And of course, the cars, so people were able to actually go up to Central City and a variety of other places, so that it did have a little run for its money back then. But they withheld, not withheld, but they held up really, really well against all of that competition. And she also had the gardens and the zoo there. She raised her own little bear cubs and lion cubs and all of that kind of stuff. So she had a variety of other things. And then they started adding the Ferris wheels and the carousels, all of the other fun rides and activities that happened there. But the theater was just very, very active. And they used to bring in people. They would just tour and come and perform on that stage. And then Mary said, you know what? I really want my own company. And so she looked high and wide and brought in famous actors from all over the country. And they spent their summers there doing summer stock repertory theater, sometimes 5 or 6 different shows every single week.
Yeah, that's really cool because that was, became sort of a staple of American theaters. They used, like stock. I think that's where the word came from, like stock props and stock sets and things like that they already had handy, so they didn't have to build everything from scratch. And they could do like kind of a lower cost summer program with a repertory company. So that was, and now, so how did it go into like its years of, I don't know, decline or just being vacant or not used?
That's a great question. And we might come back to this a little bit, but in the 50s, it was still quite active. And Helen Bonfils, of course, who is of Bonfils descent, right? She was the daughter of Frederick Bonfils, who was the publisher of the Denver Post, and then she became the publisher of the Denver Post. She loved theater, and she acted on the Elitch stage quite a lot. She decided that they really needed a fly house. And so she did build on the back part of the theater, which people can come and see when they tour. And so they were building incredible sets and had the depth of that stage to be able to build a set for Tuesday night, and then they'd move that one out, and then they'd bring up the set for Wednesday night. So it was pretty incredible. Probably more into the 80s, it started to go a little bit into decline. And then, of course, when they moved the entire amusement park to downtown in the late 90s, it was just, it was not doing well at all. And some of the people who came out, the Robber Bridegroom was in 1991. By 1992, 93, people were saying, if you leave this one more year, it's just going to be sticks on the ground. It just was not going to survive. The rabbits moved in and the foxes moved in, and a lot of raccoons built their homes inside the theater and started digging underneath the space. And of course, as I mentioned before, there was no foundation, so they could dig it quite easily.
So it kind of became its own little impromptu zoo. So
Mary probably liked it. Actually, that's funny.
Yeah. So wow. So how did it come about to come back to? Does it have a foundation now?
It does have a foundation now, and it also has a board foundation, which was very, very much dedicated to bringing the theater back. Lots and lots of people who contributed to that financially and with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that it could come back.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure the effort must have involved a lot of fundraising. Where did the money come from? Lots of small donors, some big grants, or what?
I wish I could answer that question intelligently. I actually don't know. One thing I do know is that Chuck Perry, who was a part of the establishment of all of the housing around there, he said, you are absolutely going to leave this theater here, and we are going to take care of it. And so basically he bought it and took care of it and has invested a lot of time and his own money to make sure that it could survive.
So all of the stuff, all the Ferris wheels and rides and things like that moved over to downtown. What is around the theater now? Did a neighborhood grow up around it? Or?
Right. There's a neighborhood, lots and lots of beautiful townhouses. The carousel shell is still there across the way. So if you go toward the east, you can see the carousel shell, and a lot of people use that. Some they're not really supposed to, but many of them use that for rollerblading and fun things like that. They bring in yoga classes. They had a wonderful mandolin concert there a couple of weeks ago. So, and weddings, actually. So a lot of people come in and do their weddings or receptions in the carousel shell. And then as you come to the west, you'll see the greens, which a lot of the neighbors bring their dogs to. And it's a really lovely little dog park. And then that is actually where all of the pens were for the ostriches and the little baby lions and little baby bears and all of her zoo animals. And then as you continue going to the west, then you'll find the theater.
Uh-huh. So what do we have at the theater today in terms of infrastructure, stage, lighting, seats, all that kind of thing? What's in there now? Excellent.
We the entire structure has been checked for safety, right? So we've had lots of electricians come in. We have a fire suppression system. The floor is great on the stage. It is also holding 650 workable seats on the floor. We do have a balcony that is another 300 or 400 seats, actually.
Wow.
And it's an amazing, when you look at it, even from the stage, you think maybe 350 seats, but it actually seats 650 on the floor. And the balcony is perfectly safe for all of the technicians to do the lighting and sound from, but it's not quite up to snuff yet for audience members. So we have to box that off to the audience. We do have about 25 working lights. We're working very diligently to have more LEDs and less Fresnels and those kinds of things, because those pull so much power. And this was most definitely built at a time when they weren't really concerned a lot about electricity and all of that. So there isn't as much electricity in there as most theaters nowadays have. We also do have a nice sound system, good speakers and all that kind of stuff. We run films in there at least once a month, and the sound is really excellent. But that is one of the things that we're working on, is getting lavalier mics and the soundboard, an updated lighting board, and more LED lighting.
Yeah, the LED lighting is amazing. It's so much. It's fairly less expensive than the older Klieg lights and Fresnels, things like that,
yeah.
and draws less energy. So it's great it's a great thing to put in an old building that maybe not have as much electric capacity. What about backstage? Has it got decent dressing rooms and things like that?
So we have 3 functional, beautiful dressing rooms. We have an office space, and then we have just a large, as I mentioned earlier, what Helen Bonfils had built is still there. So we can set that up for after show receptions and that kind of thing. We have pipe and drape. So if you want to block off the back side, you can have the pipe and drape there, or you can drop the entire curtain down. For Bonfils Girl, it's a one-woman show. So we'll just be dropping the large blue curtain, and then she'll be on the apron in front of that.
Okay. Great. Well, looking past the getting the Bonfils Girl in there for the first kind of inaugural live theater back in there, what else is on the horizon or on the calendar coming up?
Yes, the first part of October, on October 4th, we'll be doing The Secret Garden, and it's just been such a labor of love for so many people. We have a cast of about 70. It is a wonderful music written by Marcia Norman and Lucy Simon, who is Carly Simon's sister. And it's a beautiful musical. It has all of the sweeping melodies and orchestral parts to that. And I think it's going to be really a great way to celebrate Mary Elitch and her gardens, as well as Mary Lennox and her secret garden.
Did you say a cast of 70?
Yes.
What?
Yes. So this is being produced by the Wesley Players, which is down in Highlands Ranch, and it is a community theater. So we have wonderful, wonderful performers, but we generally like to use everybody who comes to audition. So The Secret Garden is actually written for about 22 people, but we have a large ensemble that will be singing these beautiful, beautiful melodies. So,
okay. Great. Wow. Secret Garden. So, Wesleyan, I've seen their name a few times. Actually, I live in Highlands Ranch, and I've always been like, where do they perform? So they're going to be at, the Historic
so we are
Elitch.
generally in residence at St. Luke's United Methodist Church, which is the place that this theater company started 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we are generally down there, but we decided, you know what, let's do one of our performances up at Elitch's. And so we'll be doing that on October 4th. And then we'll take all of our set pieces and costumes and go down to Highlands Ranch for the 10th through the 13th of October.
Okay, great. And so is that the way you and the board envisions the Elitch theater working, is that other theater companies could come in? It's not going to have a resident theater company per se, but other groups can kind of come in and use it?
Yes. At least for now, that is exactly right. And we have a lot of people who are really, really interested in using the theater, either for corporate training kind of events, for weddings, for their theatrical productions. There's a lot of interest in that theater now, and we're just so excited to have been able to put it out into the public a little bit more. It's such a hidden gem that a lot of people just don't even know that it's there.
Right.
And now they're starting to say, what? It's really? That's very exciting. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to mention about the Historic Elitch Theater?
You know what? Just come, please join us. We are so excited to have you there. If you would like a tour, you may come on a regular basis. We have at least 2 or 3 tours every month. We have movies. Rocky Horror Picture Show will be on October 11th. Last year was our very first time that we actually had an audience in the theater, and there were over 500 people who came for that. It was a little late in the season. We did it right before Halloween, and it was very, very cold, but we had a great time. So we decided to move it up just a little bit. The theater is it is a summer stock theater, so there is no heat in there, and so it generally closes about the 20th of October and doesn't reopen again until the middle of May.
Okay, well that makes sense. So no mid-January shows there at the Historic Elitch, unless you really want to rough it. And
You could. We've talked about having some ghost tours in there, so that might be a good time to do that.
Yeah. Well, people in Colorado are certainly used to freezing their butts off at Broncos games and Red Rock shows and things like that.
That is absolutely true. That's right.
All right. So the August 17th and 18th will be the Bonfils Girl, which is
Correct.
all about Helen Bonfils, who one of the biggest philanthropists in Denver history, and also the publisher of the Denver Post many moons ago. So it's a cool one-woman show. So that'll be coming up. And then, as you mentioned, history tours, if you really want to get a real deep dive into what the theater's all about and see it there. And all of that is on the website at historicelitchtheatre.org, and that's a RE theater. All right. Well, Roberta, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us about this super cool sort of rebooting of a historic theater.
Thank you, Alex.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode of the OnStage Colorado podcast. Thanks so much to Roberta for getting us up to date on the Historic Elitch Theatre. Cool place. I'm keen to see a show there sometime soon, and I know you will, Toni. So let us know what happens there.
I'll report back next week.
Yeah. Next week's interview we're still working on, but I'm sure we'll have some fascinating theater person on there. So for now, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your audio stuff and let people know about us. And also be sure to check out the website at onstagecolorado.com for all the other stuff that we have on there. Reviews, news, big calendar of stuff going on everywhere.
Absolutely. As always, we really appreciate you tuning into the podcast. Please feel free to rate the show on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, or wherever you're listening. And if you do, we might read your comment out on the show like we did in this week's episode.
Ooh. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca, and we'll see you at the show.
Oh, yeah.